Long ago, during the final turbulent years of the Shang Dynasty, the world stood at the brink of total collapse. The once mighty empire, which had reigned for centuries, now rotted from within. The royal court was plagued by decadence, betrayal, and bloodshed. Corruption flowed like poison through the veins of governance. Ministers fought not for justice, but for personal gain. Cruelty became policy, and fear was law. At the heart of this corruption was King Zhu of Shang, a ruler once blessed with potential, now consumed by madness. Under the influence of Ne Zha, his beautiful yet malevolent consort, who was, in truth, a fox spirit demon in disguise, he turned the imperial palace into a temple of horror. Inventing twisted devices of torture, like the infamous bronze toaster, he burned his enemies alive for amusement. Loyal subjects were executed on whims, and dissenters vanished without a trace. The empire's spiritual energy, its vital life force, waned, and across the lands, crops failed, monsters stirred in the shadows, and the people cried out in despair. The cries of the mortal realm echoed through the cosmic veil, reaching the ears of heaven. The Jade Emperor, sovereign of the celestial domain, looked down upon the earth with great sorrow. The delicate balance between heaven and earth was faltering. Demonic forces, long banished to hidden corners of the world, now re-emerged in strength, sensing the weakening of the human spirit. Spirits that once protected sacred mountains, rivers, and forests withdrew as darkness spread unchecked. The heavens convened in a grand celestial council atop the golden clouds pavilion. Gods, immortals, and spirit generals gathered to deliberate. The verdict was unanimous. The Shang dynasty's time had come to an end. But the fall of a dynasty alone would not be enough. To restore harmony, to seal the breach between the mortal and divine realms, champions were needed. Beings who could bridge both worlds. The Jade Emperor, after deep meditation and consultation with ancient prophecies, decreed a divine initiative. Celestial warriors would be born among humankind. Not gods, but not wholly mortal either. These children would carry divine essence in mortal shells, trained in heavenly arts yet shaped by human experience. From their deeds, a new era could rise. And so the celestial order stirred. The stars realigned, the winds shifted, and in the sacred realms of Kunlun, immortals set plans into motion. One such plan took root in the humble city of Chintang Pass, a coastal military outpost with little significance to history, until the miracle happened. In the eastern coastal region of China, nestled near the military stronghold of Chintang Pass, lived a loyal general named Li Jing and his gentle wife, Lady Yin. While the world around them teetered on the edge of chaos, their lives were calm and orderly. However, neither of them could have foreseen that the heavens had marked their family for an extraordinary, divine destiny. For years, Li Jing and Lady Yin had longed for a child, yet despite their prayers, Lady Yin remained childless. One night, she experienced a vivid and strange dream. In this dream, she saw a radiant lotus floating in the vast heavens, its petals glowing with golden light. The lotus descended slowly, drifting through the clouds, and finally landed upon her chest. Upon waking, she found herself pregnant, a miracle, one she could not comprehend. The child growing within her womb was no ordinary baby. The pregnancy lasted an astonishing 3.5 years. The unusual length of her pregnancy filled the household with unease. Li Jing, a man of action and strict discipline, was especially impatient. He feared that the child might be an omen, a sign of divine wrath or punishment. People whispered about the mysterious pregnancy, and the general, burdened by the weight of superstition, began to worry about the consequences. Despite his apprehension, Lady Yin remained steadfast. She believed that the child was meant to be born, and her faith in the heavens' plan never wavered. With each passing month, her anticipation grew, as did her sense that something extraordinary was about to unfold. Finally, the day arrived. Lady Yin went into labor. But what emerged from her womb was not the typical image of a newborn. Instead, a large fleshy ball of skin and sinew appeared, an odd, unsettling sight. Le Jing, horrified and fearful, immediately drew his sword, convinced that this was a terrible omen or a cursed creation. With one swift motion, he slashed the ball open, expecting the worst. To his astonishment, a small, radiant boy leaped out of the ball, fully formed, his eyes gleaming with intelligence and divine fire. He was no mere infant, but a celestial being, wrapped in an aura of light. The boy's hair shimmered like gold, and his skin glowed with an ethereal radiance. At once, he began to speak, addressing his parents in clear, articulate words. This was Ne Zha, a child unlike any other. Around his shoulders hung a red sash, a gift from the heavens, and a golden bracelet adorned his chest, symbolizing the celestial powers that had shaped his very being. His arrival had shaken the heavens and the earth alike. He was a miracle, a sign that the fate of the world had already been altered. Word of the miraculous birth spread quickly, reaching the ears of the Jade Emperor, the ruler of heaven. In response, the great immortal Taiyi Zhenren, a Taoist sage renowned for his mastery over the divine arts, descended from the heavens to witness the child. Taiyi recognized Ne Zha's immense potential and understood that he was destined for a greater purpose. The immortal was deeply moved by the child's radiance and wisdom, even at such a young age. Realizing that Ne Zha's journey had only just begun, Taiyi Zhenren approached General Li Jing and Lady Yin with an offer that would shape the boy's future. He would take Ne Zha under his wing, training him in the ancient and powerful arts of Taoism, divine magic, and celestial warfare. Taiyi Zhenren knew that the world was on the brink of monumental change, and Ne Zha's role in the coming events would be pivotal. Lady Yin, though reluctant to part with her son, understood that this was a calling she could not deny. She entrusted Ne Zha's fate to the immortal, knowing that his destiny lay beyond the mortal realm. Le Jing, though conflicted, agreed, realizing that his son was no ordinary child. He was destined to play a key role in the struggle between heaven and earth. Thus, Ne Zha embarked on his journey, leaving his parents and the mortal world behind. Under Taiyi Zhenren's guidance, he began his training in the hidden realms of heaven and earth, mastering the ancient Taoist arts that would shape him into a warrior of unimaginable power. The divine treasures he would soon wield, the wind-fire wheels, the red armillary sash, and the fire-tipped spear, would be bestowed upon him, marking him as a being of both heavenly and earthly origins. As Ne Zha's training progressed, his celestial abilities grew stronger. He was no longer a mere mortal boy, but a being with the power to alter the fabric of reality itself. His heart, though young, burned with a fierce desire to protect the innocent and right the wrongs of the world. Little did he know that his journey was about to take him down a path fraught with immense trials, battles against powerful foes, and a destiny that would challenge not only his strength, but his very identity. Ne Zha's years under the tutelage of Taiyi Zhenren on Mount Kunlun were marked by rapid growth, both in his understanding of the universe and in his own inner strength. The sacred mountain, known as the highest of all divine realms, became the perfect backdrop for his training. With every passing day, Ne Zha's powers expanded, and his abilities to command the elements and control the energies of Taoism grew formidable. Ne Zha was an exceptional student, but his youthful exuberance and restless nature often led him into trouble. Though he was a child of divine origin, his spirit was still that of a mischievous boy. His curiosity knew no bounds, and his energy was boundless. Tai Zhenren, wise and patient, was fully aware of Ne Zha's impetuousness, but he also understood that it was this very nature that made Ne Zha a unique force in the world. His rebellious streak would serve him well, for only by challenging the established order could he carve out his own path. As Ne Zha matured, his powers grew beyond the ordinary, and with them came the acquisition of 3 legendary weapons, each embodying his growing mastery over divine forces. The Universe Ring, a weapon of immense destructive power. The Universe Ring was a golden circle that could annihilate anything in its path. Ne Zha wielded it with deadly precision. With a flick of his wrist, he could send it soaring through the air, and with a flash of brilliant light, it would destroy enemies in an instant. The Universe Ring was a manifestation of his celestial power, symbolizing his ability to bend the very fabric of the cosmos. The Red Armillary Sash. This magical ribbon, blood red in color, was woven with the power to trap, bind, and cut anything it touched. It moved with a life of its own, responding to Ne Zha's will. Whether used to ensnare a foe, bind them in place, or slice through solid stone, the Red Armillary Sash became Ne Zha's signature weapon. It represented his unyielding strength and the endless reach of his divine power. The Wind-Fire Wheels. These 2 enchanted wheels allowed Ne Zha to soar through the skies with unmatched speed. The wheels, powered by the wind and fire, could carry him across vast distances in moments. With them, Ne Zha could fly into battle, taking on enemies from above and striking with unparalleled swiftness. The Wind-Fire Wheels symbolized his independence and his connection to the elemental forces of nature. One day, Ne Zha, ever the restless spirit, sought to explore the mortal realm once again. He descended to the sea near Chentang Pass, a familiar place from his childhood. The waters were calm and clear, stretching out into the horizon. However, this serene sea was not without its own dangers. The Dragon King Ao Guang, ruler of the Eastern Sea, had laid claim to the waters, and his sons, fierce and prideful, ruled the sea like tyrants. Ne Zha was bathing in the cool waters when one of Ao Guang's sons, the Prince Ao Bing, appeared before him. Ao Bing was young but proud, and he viewed the arrival of this divine child as an insult to his authority. Angered by the intrusion, Ao Bing demanded that Ne Zha leave at once, asserting his dominion over the seas. Ne Zha, as usual, was not one to back down from a challenge. His youthful arrogance and immense power flared in response. "I do not fear you, Dragon Prince," Ne Zha retorted, his eyes glowing with celestial light. A fierce battle erupted between the two, and the once tranquil sea became a battlefield. Waves crashed against the shore, and the sky darkened with the fury of their clash. Ne Zha's magical weapons came to life as he summoned the power of the elements. The wind swirled around him, the fire in his heart burned with a fierce intensity, and the sea itself seemed to rebel under their feet. Ao Bing, though powerful in his own right, was no match for the young god's fury. Ne Zha, in a final strike, used his universe ring to obliterate the Dragon Prince. The ring flashed with blinding light, and Ao Bing was disintegrated in an instant, his body reduced to nothingness. The sea, once calm and clear, turned red with the blood of the Dragon Prince, staining the waters in an omen of great consequence. The death of Ao Bing was a devastating blow to the dragon kings of the four seas. Infuriated and desperate for vengeance, Ao Guang, the dragon king of the east, stormed the Jade Emperor's court in heaven. He demanded justice for the death of his son and the affront to the Dragon Kingdom's honor. His fury was boundless, and he threatened to unleash calamity upon the mortal world unless Ne Zha was punished. The Jade Emperor, bound by the laws of heaven but sympathetic to Ne Zha's plight, was left in a difficult position. However, the Dragon Kings would not be swayed. They unleashed a series of violent storms and floods upon Chentang Pass, ravaging the land and drowning the innocent in their wake. Ne Zha, unwilling to let the mortal realm suffer because of his actions, took matters into his own hands. He donned his divine armor and set off for the palace of Ao Guang, determined to face the Dragon King himself. The palace of the Dragon King was a magnificent structure beneath the sea, a vast, glittering citadel of coral and jade. Ne Zha descended into the depths, using his wind-fire wheels to glide effortlessly through the treacherous waters. Upon reaching the Dragon King's palace, Ne Zha confronted Ao Guang and his court. The Dragon King, furious but unyielding, sent his army of sea creatures and mythical beasts to defeat the young god. But Ne Zha, empowered by his divine training and his magical weapons, fought with unmatched ferocity. The red armillary sash whipped through the air, binding and slashing through the dragon warriors. The universe ring obliterated anything that stood in his path, and the very waters seemed to bend to his will. With each victory, Ne Zha grew stronger, and his resolve deepened. He was not just a child of the heavens. He was a force unto himself, capable of defying even the most ancient of powers. In the end, he defeated Ao Guang's army and shamed the Dragon Kings. The once proud ruler of the Eastern Sea was humiliated, his forces scattered and broken. Ne Zha's actions, though reckless and impulsive, had saved Chentang Pass and shown the heavens that his power could not be easily contained. He had proven once again that he was not bound by the laws of gods or men. The battle with Ao Guang would be remembered for centuries, a testament to Ne Zha's courage, his defiance of fate, and his willingness to fight for what he believed was right. The tides of fate had turned, and the price for Ne Zha's defiance had been set. The Dragon Kings, enraged by the death of their beloved son, Ao Bing, demanded the ultimate sacrifice, Ne Zha's life. The Jade Emperor, bound by the ancient laws of heaven, saw no way to escape the punishment. His words were final, and the celestial courts echoed with the decree that the young god must die. Li Jing, Ne Zha's father, stood at a crossroads. A strict general, loyal to the throne and to the celestial order, he knew that his son's death was inevitable. The weight of the impending punishment bore down on him with unbearable force. He feared the consequences of defying heaven. Punishment would not only fall upon his household, but would likely bring ruin to Chentang Pass and its people. To protect them, he prepared himself to surrender Ne Zha, knowing full well that doing so would break his heart. But Ne Zha, ever defiant, had already made his decision. His rebellious spirit, now tempered by wisdom and selflessness, led him to act with a maturity that no one had expected. It was not the impulsive child who had defied the Dragon Kings or waged battles against celestial beings. It was a son who now understood the weight of his actions, a son who had come to realize the responsibility of his divine birth. One evening, under the moonlit sky, Ne Zha approached his parents with a quiet resolve. The air in their humble home felt heavy, as though the world itself held its breath. His father, a seasoned warrior, looked at him with sorrowful eyes, knowing that the time for defiance had passed. His mother, Lady Yin, who had raised him with tenderness and love, looked at him with an unspoken fear in her heart. "Mother, father," Ne Zha said softly, his voice steady yet filled with the gravity of the moment. "You gave me life, and I now return it to you. I have no regrets, for I have lived fully and fought with honor." Before either parent could respond, Ne Zha moved quickly, his actions swift and final. With a powerful tear, he ripped through his own flesh, releasing his spirit and returning it to the heavens from which it came. The world seemed to stop as his body fell lifeless to the ground. Ne Zha's death was a sacrifice of pure love, an act of ultimate filial devotion. In his selflessness, he fulfilled his duty as a son, offering his life to spare the lives of his parents and the people of Chentang Pass. The celestial realm, shaken by the audacity of his decision, fell into an eerie silence. Chentang Pass is spared, but grief consumes the household. The immediate consequence of Ne Zha's death was the cessation of the storms and floods that had ravaged Chentang Pass. The Dragon Kings, their demand fulfilled, withdrew their wrath, and the skies cleared. The people of Chentang Pass, unaware of the great sacrifice that had been made, found themselves spared from the destruction that had been threatened by the anger of the dragons. But the peace came at a cost too great for the hearts of those who loved Ne Zha. Li Jing, devastated by the loss of his son, found himself torn between his love for Ne Zha and his duty to the celestial realm. His heart bowled for the son he had raised, a son who had been as wild as the winds and as fierce as the fire. He had hoped to see Ne Zha grow into the divine warrior he was destined to be, to stand by his side in battles yet to come. But now, that future was gone. Lady Yin, however, was consumed by an unrelenting grief. As a mother, she could not bear the thought of her child being lost forever. In the silence of the night, she would retreat to a hidden shrine she had built in secret, where she prayed for Ne Zha's return. She whispered words of love to the air, hoping against hope that the heavens might listen to her plea. Every day, Lady Yin would visit the shrine, offering incense and flowers, and she would weep for her son. The shrine became a place of mourning, a sacred space where she could commune with the spirit of Ne Zha, even if she could no longer see him with her mortal eyes. Her prayers were not just for the return of his soul, they were for the redemption of the world. For in Ne Zha's death, she felt a sense of purpose that transcended the bounds of grief. Her son had given his life for the greater good, and she would honor that sacrifice for as long as she lived. While Li Jing and Lady Yin were trapped in their sorrow, heaven was not blind to Ne Zha's selfless act. Though he had torn his own body asunder, his spirit was undying. The Jade Emperor, who had watched the sacrifice from his throne in heaven, knew that Ne Zha's time on earth had not yet come to an end. His destiny was not yet fulfilled. In the heavenly realms, a council of immortals convened, debating how best to honor Ne Zha's sacrifice. Tai Jinren, Ne Zha's master, spoke with reverence of the boy's bravery and selflessness. He believed that Ne Zha's soul could be restored, but not without divine intervention. It would require the power of the highest immortals, and even then, Ne Zha's return would not be the same as before. The immortals decided that Ne Zha's spirit would be reborn, but in a different form. His body would be remade, not from flesh alone, but from the essence of the divine. This rebirth would be his second chance, a chance to continue his path of righteousness and fulfill his ultimate purpose. Thus, Ne Zha's soul was restored, his body reformed from divine fire and essence, a miraculous rebirth that would mark the beginning of his true legacy. His power, though now tempered by humility and wisdom, would be even greater than before. And in his second life, he would face even greater challenges, battles that would shape not only his own fate, but the fate of heaven and earth itself. Ne Zha's sacrifice had echoed through the heavens, stirring the hearts of the immortals. But his journey was far from over. His soul was too powerful, too pure, to be extinguished by a single act of selflessness. And so, Tai Zhenren, moved by the boy's unwavering courage and love, took it upon himself to restore what had been lost. The immortal, knowing the sacredness of Ne Zha's destiny, called upon the deepest of celestial magics. Tai Zhenren used the rarest of lotus flowers, an artifact imbued with the divine essence of life and rebirth. From this flower, he wove a new body for Ne Zha, a body not born of flesh, but of the essence of the heavens themselves. The lotus's power was so pure, so filled with celestial might, that Ne Zha's new form would be indestructible. It would be free from the taint of mortality and sin. It was a body built for war, but one also capable of spiritual enlightenment. As the petals of the lotus unfurled, Ne Zha emerged, his form radiant with the light of the heavens. His body was now one with the celestial realm, his powers amplified beyond his mortal understanding. His eyes burned with the fire of a warrior, but his heart, tempered by his previous life and sacrifice, burned with a newfound clarity and purpose. No longer fully human, Ne Zha was something more, a godly warrior bound by both destiny and pain. He rose, not as a boy, but as a force of nature, his very presence shaking the air around him. His golden armor shimmered, reflecting the light of the heavens, and his weapons, the universe ring and the red armillary sash, glowed with power. He was ready to return to the mortal realm and finish the unfinished business of his life. But there was one thing that awaited him: his father. Upon Ne Zha's return, Li Jing's heart was filled with dread. His son had come back, not in the form of the child he had once known, but as something far more powerful, a celestial being reborn with the fury of the heavens. He had feared this day, when Ne Zha, having seen the true scope of his power, would come back to challenge the world, to assert his newfound place in the celestial order. Li Jing had spent so long mourning his son's death, but now, standing before him, was a Ne Zha reborn, a Ne Zha who was no longer under his control. The general's mind, clouded by his fear, saw only danger in Ne Zha's return. He believed that his son's power was too great, that it would be the undoing of everything he had worked for. In his desperation, he sought to destroy the shrine where his wife had secretly prayed for Ne Zha's return, attempting to erase all memories of the child who had caused so much upheaval. It was in this moment of panic that father and son, so deeply connected by blood, found themselves in an unexpected confrontation. The anger and fear that had been building up inside Li Jing erupted in a storm of fury, while Ne Zha, hurt and enraged by his father's rejection, lashed out in turn. Their clash was no mere father-son argument. It was a battle that threatened to tear apart the very world they stood upon. Ne Zha, in his divine form, wielded the power of the heavens, his every move causing the air to crackle with celestial energy. His red armillary sash whipped through the air like a living thing, and the universe ring blazed with destructive power. But Li Jing, though human, was no mere mortal. He had been a general on the battlefield, a warrior in his own right, His sword clashed against Ne Zha's powers, sparks flying as father and son faced each other in a brutal, emotional battle. The world trembled as they fought. Mountains shook, the sky darkened, and the seas roiled with the violence of their struggle. It seemed as though nothing could stop them from destroying each other. But just as the battle reached its peak, divine intervention stepped in. Taiyi Zhenren, along with other immortals, descended from the heavens, their power filling the air like a great wind. They summoned their divine influence to halt the battle, freezing both Ne Zha and Li Jing in their tracks. With an ethereal voice, Taiyi Zhenren called out to the two of them, urging them to cease the fight. He reminded them that they were both bound by destiny, and that this clash between father and son was not the path they were meant to walk. Ne Zha, still burning with anger, and Li Jing, still trembling with fear, stood locked in their positions, each unwilling to relent. But the divine power surrounding them was undeniable. Slowly, reluctantly, they lowered their weapons, the tension between them palpable. The immortals, witnessing the emotional devastation of both father and son, worked tirelessly to mediate their conflict. It was clear to all that Ne Zha's return was not just a physical one. It was a test for both him and his father. Ne Zha, for all his power and courage, had yet to learn humility, while Li Jing, for all his devotion to duty, had yet to accept that his son was no longer the child he had once known. Over time, with the guidance of the immortals, a fragile reconciliation began. Ne Zha, though still defiant and headstrong, began to understand the love and fear his father had for him. He saw that Li Jing had only acted out of protection, a desire to shield his son from the burden of divine power and the dangers it entailed. Likewise, Li Jing began to understand that his son's rebirth was a divine intervention, a sign that Ne Zha's path was far greater than anything he had imagined. Though their hearts were still heavy with unresolved emotions, they found common ground in their shared love for the people they had both sworn to protect. And so, they began to rebuild their relationship, slowly, cautiously, but with the knowledge that their bond was one that transcended both mortal and celestial realms. The tension between them, though eased, would never fully disappear. Ne Zha's rebirth was not just a return to life. It was a turning point in the fate of both father and son. The struggles they had faced and the battles they had fought were but the beginning of a much greater journey, one that would see them through the trials of heaven, earth, and the vast untold realms beyond. The land of China, once prosperous and filled with promise, had now descended into an age of darkness. Under the reign of the tyrannical King Zhu of the Shang Dynasty, the country suffered from unbearable cruelty. King Zhu, once a capable ruler, had fallen under the sway of his demonic consort, deity, whose bewitching powers and dark magic turned the once noble king into a puppet of evil. Deity, a fox spirit in disguise, had come to the king's court and twisted his heart with her enchantments. Through witchcraft and blood sacrifices, she manipulated King Zhu, pushing him toward acts of unimaginable cruelty, brutal executions, sacrificial rites, and the slaughter of innocent people. Under her influence, King Zhao turned against his own subjects, his advisors, and even the gods themselves. The nation, once unified and thriving, was now torn apart by corruption and darkness, with no hope in sight. But the heavens, too, had their limits. The gods, who had long watched in silence as the world spiraled into chaos, could no longer remain passive. The corruption of the Shang Dynasty threatened to rip apart the natural order, and the gods saw it as their divine duty to intervene. It was a time for the forces of righteousness to rise and challenge the evil that had overtaken the land. Ne Zha, reborn as a warrior of the heavens, had already proven himself a formidable force. His strength, his magical weapons, and his boundless courage made him an ideal candidate to join the divine campaign against the Shang Dynasty. But this would be no ordinary battle. It would be a war that pitted the powers of the heavens against the dark forces that had corrupted the mortal realm. The campaign was led by Shang Dynasty, a revered immortal strategist and the emissary of the future Shang Dynasty. Shang Dynasty was a figure of great wisdom, a master of war tactics and divine magic. He had long awaited the moment when the gods would rise up to end the tyranny of the Shang Emperor. With his guidance, the gods formed an army, rallying divine warriors and legendary heroes from across the celestial realms, all united in their mission to overthrow King Zhu and restore order to the mortal world. Ne Zha, eager to serve the heavens, took his place in this grand campaign. He was not alone. Alongside him stood the great general Youthful, the mighty warrior Lai Zhenzi, and countless other heroes of legend. They were all bound by a common cause: to bring an end to the reign of King Zhu and rid the world of the evil that had infected it. The war was waged on multiple fronts, with divine warriors descending upon the mortal realm, engaging in fierce battles with the armies of the Shang. Ne Zha, with his speed and elemental control, became a key figure in the war effort. On his wind-fire wheels, he zipped across the battlefield, striking down demon soldiers and sending shockwaves through the ranks of the Shang forces. His universe ring shattered the very air, obliterating enemies in flashes of light, while his red armillary sash bound and trapped those who dared to stand against him. But the true battle would be fought against the heart of the evil, the tyrant King Zhu and his demonic consort, deity. The ultimate showdown came when the divine forces, led by Shang Dynasty and Ne Zha, reached the heart of the Shang Dynasty, King Zhao's palace. The battle between the celestial warriors and the forces of darkness raged across the kingdom, the skies alight with the fury of gods and demons. Mountains trembled as the earth itself seemed to split beneath the clash of divine and demonic power. Ne Zha, his anger and sorrow burning from the wrongs done to his world, stood ready to face the ultimate enemy, King Zhao himself. But the tyrant king was no mere mortal. He had been twisted and empowered by deity, whose magic had given him the strength to defy the gods. The king wielded dark forces that could shatter the very heavens, and deity, using her seductive power, stood by his side, summoning terrible demonic beasts to fight alongside him. The final battle was not just one of physical might, but of spiritual will. Ne Zha faced King Zhu in an epic duel that shook the heavens. Each blow from Ne Zha's universe ring sent shockwaves through the palace, while King Zhu retaliated with blasts of dark energy that threatened to consume everything in their path. Meanwhile, deity, hidden behind the veil of her fox spirit powers, weaved her magic to try and ensnare Ne Zha in illusions, attempting to twist his mind and weaken his resolve. But Ne Zha, empowered by the heavens and bound to a higher cause, fought on with the fury of 1,000 storms. With the divine energy flowing through him, he resisted deity's enchantments and broke through King Zhao's defenses. The moment of triumph came when Ne Zha, with a single strike from his red armillary sash, shattered the demon king's defenses and struck down the tyrant king, bringing an end to his reign of terror. With King Zhao's fall, the dark magic that had corrupted the Shang Dynasty began to dissipate. The land, once filled with suffering and fear, was slowly freed from the grip of darkness. But the battle was not yet over. Though King Ju had fallen, Daji's power remained. In a final desperate attempt to preserve her dark hold over the mortal realm, Daji unleashed her full fury, summoning a storm of destructive energy. But even this was no match for Ne Zha's divine powers. With one final, mighty blow, he broke her spell, and the demonic consort was vanquished. The war of the gods had finally come to an end. With the fall of King Ju and Daji, the Shang Dynasty was no more. The heavens rejoiced, but the victory was bittersweet. Ne Zha, his heart heavy with the burden of war, stood amidst the ruins of the palace, his mind filled with both triumph and sorrow. The cost of the war had been high, and though peace had been restored, the scars of the battle would remain for generations. The Zhao dynasty, led by Zhang Zia, now took its place as the new rulers of the land, guided by the wisdom and righteousness that had defeated the evil of the Shang. But even as the new era began, Ne Zha knew that his journey was far from over. The forces of darkness never slept, and there would always be battles to fight, demons to slay, and a destiny to fulfill. But for now, Ne Zha had achieved something remarkable. He had helped restore balance to a world teetering on the edge of destruction. And as the gods of the heavens looked down upon the earth, they knew that Ne Zha would forever be a symbol of righteousness, bravery, and sacrifice. A warrior who had transcended death itself to become a living legend.